gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. Gory, gory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Hell of a Way to Die. It is me and Nate. Nate, how are things going? Nate and I are experiencing something together across the ponds. We are both experiencing trying to get the fuck rid of the place we live so that we can move into another place. And it has been absolute hell. Fun. It's fun to get rid of like a house. How's your flat doing, or whatever they call it over there?
Yeah, so we got really lucky, which is to say that after months and months of either not quite being at the point of being able to break our lease or shit just not being available, there was an agent we had been working with for a long time, and she called me and she's like, "There's a place you really should see. You should come immediately if you can. It's not going to last." And so we went and took a look at it, and it was absolutely everything we were looking for, and it's like 5 minutes from where we live, and we absolutely could not afford it whatsoever. But I said, fuck it, whatever, why not, and put in an offer for the most that we could potentially afford. And the surprisingly, the landlord immediately accepted it, which is hilarious because the agent has told me that because of their system, the house is still listed even though it's not available, and they're just constantly getting calls from people who want to rent it. So like, I'm sure that if the landlady had held out a little longer, she probably could have gotten full asking price, but it would have been like a bunch of students who would have had like GHB parties in there and just like gotten, drilled a hole in the wall with their heads from taking too much drugs. So I'm sure she was happy to rent to a family. But anyway, we got the place, but because of our breaking our lease and everything, we're not moving until November 15th. And so as a result, in the interim, they're trying to rent the place, and we're constantly having to clear out and like clean it up and get people to walk through. But for one, the common areas of the building complex that it's in are a little bit grim, and for another, British people are just fucking disgusting, and so like they're constantly tracking in mud and dirt and shit in this place, and so I'm having to clean up the floor because people can't take their shoes off. It's like, I don't understand. Maybe it's because, granted, I was a white kid who grew up in the Midwest, but then I lived in Korea for a while. I just don't understand this aversion to taking your fucking shoes off inside someone's house. Like, why do people not take their shoes off?
All right,
but
look,
they won't do it.
Look, I got all hardwood floors, and I've got a Great Pyrenees that loves to roll around in the back. So my floors, I could mop my floors every day and my floors would still be kind of nasty. So I get that, but also when you said people come in out of the rain with their muddy shoes walking on their carpet, like if I walked into a fully carpeted area, I would probably take my shoes off. But like
it's not carpeted. Ours it's like a wood veneer floor, but we have some like rugs. And like I've seen basketball shoes size fucking muddy footprints on the floors, which I just assume are also on the rugs. But also I think it's a thing too that like I also lived in New York City, which is so incredibly disgusting that even if you've got a dog, like you can't wear shoes in that. Like it's just the kind of filth you'll track in New York City. Like the reason why basically no apartments in New York City have carpeted floors, unless they're in like the bougiest of bougie buildings, is because it's such a disgusting city and everything is so gross everywhere that like that filth gets on your shoes. You have to take your shoes off. And so similarly here, like London is not necessarily that much cleaner than New York. And yet folks don't take their shoes off. They just troop around unwashed, stomping all over my floors. So needless to say, our house is very clean because I'm constantly cleaning it. But we'll be celebrating another year of successful podcasting. We'll be celebrating, more than a year since we moved here, me aging out of the young people demographic. And finally, at the end of the year, we'll also be celebrating living in a place that's like is big enough for us and also like doesn't have the conundrum of having to do viewings all the time for at least 2 years. So that's good.
Yeah, we finally closed on our place. The new house. So it is officially ours. The electricity is turned on into our name tomorrow. Now, just to get rid of the fucking palatial mansion. And I think once we drop the price a little bit more, because like my wife and I are at this, like we're the worst property owners, right? Because my mom and dad give me shit all the time because like together we own now 3 houses. Now we own the house that we currently live in, the house that we're buying, and then my wife's house before we got together. It's a little tiny shotgun house. We have a friend that lives there. He takes care of the place. We've never raised his rent. He's always been on time with it. Like we never, and and he would buy the place if he had like the credit, basically. But he doesn't. He's got to build up his credit before he can like get a loan for it. And my parents were always just like, "Oh, maybe having 3 houses isn't just not working out for you." It's like, first off, I don't want 3 houses. I want 1 house because I can only live in 1 house at a time. But also, somehow, I am probably going to be the only person that doesn't make money off of real estate. Like, I am the anti-Donald Trump. Like, I just like the rental property. When you think like after paying mortgage on the house, and then like we pay the gas and the sewer, we quote make $50 a month on that. And then the big house, it's just like, I don't care, as long as I make enough money. Give me $1,000, just $1,000, and I will leave this house. Because I gotta pay taxes and shit. So, I'm somehow gonna manage to not make, and I don't care at this point. I just want out of the house. I want out of the big house. I love this big house, but I just want out of the big house because.
Francis, it sounds very dangerously close to you saying that you're an ethical landlord. Little worried here, concerned.
Yeah, and you know what? Being an ethical landlord fucking sucks because you don't make any fucking money. So like you can either be a shitty landlord or you can be an ethical landlord, or we can just let everybody have free public housing, which is just going to be the easiest thing to do. But yeah, this landlording nonsense is out the way. Like because when we had a roommate in this house, we charged him $425 a month, and we raised his rent once. Now we lived here for 8 months. We raised him to $450 once during the summer because we were like, dude, you can't just like leave your air conditioning unit on while you're not home. And he's like, if I give you $25 more a month, can I do that then? To pay for the electricity. And we're like, yeah, okay, fine. So like he offered to give us more money just so he could keep his air conditioning on longer.
I did that one time when I was staying with a friend, a guy that I knew in Alaska. I was renting a place like the downstairs of this townhouse he had bought because he, brand new Army lieutenant. The first thing he did was buy a house with like a VA loan. And he was charging me $750 to like rent the downstairs suite, and Alaska's really expensive. So I mean, like the housing allowance from the Army covered it. And I was just like, hey, if I pay you $800. Is it cool if I like share in the Costco food that you fucking buy in bulk all the time? And he was cool. And I was like, yeah, but I could afford that. But like, that's very different, I think, like in a roommate scenario versus like your landlord being like, hey, can you give me 50 more bucks a year or I'll kick you out on the street? Like, yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and like I said, the rental place that we have is really cool because the guy is like, he got a late degree in computer science, but he's been a handyman for like ever. So, any like repairs that need to be done around the house, he'll be like, oh yeah, I'll take care of it. And one time he actually laid the floor in our kitchen. So we gave him like 2 months, free in there. It was like a month and a half free. We gave him, he quoted us and we're just like, how about we just, you don't pay us rent for that, for whatever time that is. Yeah. He came in, man. He was like, cause it's all like, this really nice, ceramic tiling. And he came, it fucking looks beautiful. And he, knocked it out in a day or two, scraped up all the old laminate, laid that in, and was just like, all right, man. He's great too because he seems like he's high all the time, and I don't think he is, but he seems like he's got a very Shaggy from Scooby-Doo vibe to him. So, but he's like 45.
I know we got to get on to the topic, but I was going to say that's something that's really interesting to me though, Francis, just the fact that like people who do trades work like that often don't have credit unless they own their own company. And like, you can't necessarily expect everyone to fucking own their own company. And even if you do own your own company, it's hard because like proving income. So basically the whole system that allows you to get your own house requires you to work for someone else. And if you don't have like a straight job where someone is profiting the fuck off you all the time and you haven't taken out a bunch of credit card loans to pay back, in order to like build up a credit history, you won't be able to buy a house.
Well,
and it's sort of like, unless you're really balls lucky and you just saved up a ton of money and you buy a house in cash, but outside of very, very inexpensive areas, that doesn't seem very possible.
Let me just say though, it is because what it is, it's about claimed income. So the house that we bought, the guy who was in it, the owner of the house was saying like, hey, you can buy the house if you want, and he's like, hey, he didn't have the credit. Now, to be fair, he also didn't have the money. He stopped paying rent and was living there rent free for about like 5 months before the owner had to get him out. But the way like you can, because when we buy the house, they're like, okay, we want to see your income, right? So I could go to them with just my regular normal IT job and say, here it is, I make X amount of dollars, and then the Army too, and I'd take those two. And I could say, this is the amount of money that I make. And they're like, well, they could say, well, based on this, you don't make enough money. So then I come in with like, when I do it, I was like, here's what we make on the Patreon. Here's what my wife makes, because we claim all that income. And when you claim it, that means it gets taxed. So if like we were, because I think with Patreon, it's like you don't start getting like the tax documents until you hit $20,000 or $20,000 a year. So like you can really kind of tax wise fly under the radar with Patreon for a while. Now, look, the government can come for your ass, so I would not suggest that. But yeah, like it does suck. And James, the guy who lives in there, like he does make good money, but the thing is like, yeah, you would have to just create an LLC and start claiming the money, but then you would have to start claiming the taxes. So it's a mix of like,
of course.
Right. So it's just like, okay, do I want to claim the income, and then, I'm quote good in the eyes of credit and in the eyes of the government and all this stuff, or do I not want to give the government 40% of my of this, $300 you're handing me, and I just take it and I do whatever I want with it. So it's like that, as good socialists, it's that mix of just like, I don't want the government in my business, but also you should pay taxes, but also it doesn't mean me. I shouldn't pay taxes, God damn it. Make Amazon pay taxes, and then income from me, God damn it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where I feel like you absolutely don't balance, the budget required for social programs for doing socialism on the backs of people who like are fucking tradesmen. When you have companies like you said, like Amazon and GE, and doing all this fucking chicanery and sleight of hand to pay zero taxes ever on their billion-dollar fortunes, that's obviously huge horse shit. And I agree. And I mean, don't get me wrong, there's very little I would say Britain is a model for, because like it's really cynical, just like kind of bullshit governance, but they have a complete income tax exemption for people if they earn basically the first £13,500 a year you earn, you don't pay any income tax on. You do have to pay some national insurance, like the equivalent of Social Security tax, but like it's relatively small. But obviously that's not enough to live on outside of, if you're in like the countryside or in like really, really poor cities in this country, it's enough to like break even and get by, but it's not enough to get by on in a place like London. But I did like that because, I remember my brother, by comparison, he helped me out with a bunch of copywriting work when he was looking for a job when he first moved back to America. And over the course of a year, he earned $11,500 doing copywriting, and he wound up having to pay like 25% taxes on that. So it's like, here's somebody who's absolutely below the poverty line for a single individual, and the government's coming at him with like all these fucking tax burden things. It's just like it's insane. Like, that's the wrong person to be taxing. And the same with like your friend. That's the wrong person to be taxing. And it's not like, oh, you're a socialist, but you hate taxes. It's like more like I understand that a guy who does tradesman work and construction work as a sole proprietor is not the same as Jeff fucking Bezos. And it's like, wow, you're a socialist, but you know that one bigger number is bigger than a smaller number? Funny how that is. It's like, shut the fuck up. Like, stop playing dumb in the service of rich assholes. Yeah, look, and plenty of times, like when I pay people for services, like, you don't really have to start paying, you don't have to start claiming anything on taxes until you make more than $600, like, technically. But like also, the IRS ain't looking over my shoulder. So, if I'm working with somebody, or I'm, it's like, I'll pay you this, you pay me that, or, I work so much on the barter system now, like just with people, like back and forth, just, face to face, rather than having to do any of that shit. Like, fucking, yeah, come fucking tax the hot pickles I make, bitch. Like, do what you can. So look. I pay my taxes. That's what matters. Government officials that are listening to this podcast, I pay my fucking taxes. So fuck off. I need to sell this house so I can pay my taxes next year. Anyway, Nate, let's talk about the Army. Let's talk about the damn Army.
I didn't know which one you wanted to start with here. We should have discussed that first. Did we want to laugh, or do we want to cry first?
Let's laugh first. Let's talk about the UCP, or as we know it, the Army Combat Uniform, the ACU. Its wear-out date has finally been reached.
Now let me push my BCGs up my nose and be the nerd here. The Army Combat Uniform still exists. The UCP Yes, UCP is a universal camouflage pattern. Universal stands. They say universal because you need to be in a different universe for this camouflage to actually fucking work. Because this works absolutely. This camouflage was good for like a parking lot. Like the motor pool that was covered in gravel. You could hide on that, and that's about it. But yeah, now we're the OCP, which is, what does OCP stand for? I don't fucking know. I don't care. Doesn't matter. Nate, you know what? I've had 4 different combat uniforms in the 20 years I've been in. 4. I've had 3 different PT uniforms. And with pinks and greens, it's going to make 3 different dress uniforms in 4 years. I don't know how many wars we're fighting here that we got to start changing all this shit constantly. Like, look, it's good that we got away from those sweatpant PTs. That's fine. This new...
Yeah, because those would get soggy as hell. I never had to wear them, but I remember my dad having to wear them, and sometimes he'd come back from PT when we lived on base just like just soaked to the bone completely.
Oh, yeah, they're disgusting. Like, the gray ones that had the water repelling. Now, and I will say also, when we moved to the secondary PTs with those gray shirts, those polyester shirts, fucking sucked. I hated them. They were like, I've never had a t-shirt feel heavy on me until I wore those shirts, and then you sweat.
It was amazing when they did get wet how heavy they'd become. I do remember that.
Yeah, they were.
I never wore the black PTs. Awful. I was only in. So I wore BDUs when I was a cadet because that was what we were issued. I very briefly wore DCUs as a cadet when I was assigned to a cadet troop leading training rotation at 11th ACR at Fort Irwin, California. And then I wore ACUs, the gray ones, my senior year of college as a cadet, and then the entire time I was in the Army. So ACUs was all I knew on active duty. Aside from in Ranger School, we were still within the window for wearing BDUs. And since BDUs hold together a hell of a lot better than ACUs, I just opted to have my entire uniform, all the 7 sets of uniforms I think were on the packing list for Ranger School. I opted for all of them to be BDUs.
Yeah, so BDUs is the battle dress uniform, and that is the old, like when you see the mottled green, dark, just
the green uniform that has the splotchy camo, but the big smooth round bands of camouflage.
Right.
But it's mostly woodland green. That is what we call BDUs.
Right.
Those replaced the old solid OD green uniforms that were standard in the Army in the 80s, in the early 80s. BDUs came out, I want to say, like the camo print had been around since the 70s, since Vietnam, but no one basically had worn it. I want to say they first came into use in the early 80s, and it was by like the mid 80s that everyone had switched to BDUs. So like when my dad commissioned in the Army, when my dad was a cadet at West Point, they were still wearing, there were some people that were still wearing the OD greens with like the black and white name tapes that they wore in Vietnam. By the time that he commissioned, he was wearing the solid OD green uniforms, and like the photos of him and my mom when they were both in the Army together, they're both in the solid OD green uniform. And then my earliest memory of my dad in the military when I was, probably 3 years old, because I don't remember before that, he was wearing BDUs, and he wore those his entire career. Because he got out in 98 and the wars hadn't started, so people hadn't gone back to wearing DCUs. My dad didn't deploy to the Gulf War, so he didn't wear what they call the chocolate chip cookie dough desert uniform, which is a thing that existed. The Saudis still use it, but we stopped using it after the Gulf War. And the ACUs didn't come around until 2005, I think. Or the gray camo print that you can blend in with a broken TV, you can blend in with a gravel pit. That uniform didn't come around until
2004. 2004 is when it was introduced. So yeah, when I deployed in 2004 myself, we wore the DCUs, which is the Desert Combat Uniform, which is like a BDU, but it's just light colored for the desert. Now you would think like, oh, good, they gave you camouflage that helps you blend into the area that you're in. Yes, but they gave me a BDU colored body armor. So really, that just kind of gave you a big target to shoot at. It's like shoot for the big green splotch out there. So
yes, that's a famous thing that happened to me too in training. Not as much deployment, but in training, you would often get the hand-me-down gear. So invariably, you were out training in ACUs, but in the gray camouflage pattern. But you had to be out wearing a flak vest or a flak vest with plates and an equipment vest, and those were olive drab green, or those were like meant to work with the BDU. So you had woodland green armor and woodland green, elbow pads and knee pads, woodland green equipment carrier, but then you had your weird gray grandma's couch blend in camouflage pattern.
And I gotta say, man, like as you said, the BDUs like really held up. I fucking miss the BDU. I miss however they made it. Remake the BDU.
It was so well
BDUs.
made. Yeah, it's crazy.
So if for those of you troops that are listening who are not old as shit like we are, the original BDUs were like you had your summer weights and you had your winter weights. So you had ones that were like a little bit thicker for the winter. They had, patrol caps. They had winter and summer ones. The winter patrol cap had a little fuzzy thing you could flip down and cover your ears with. That was beautiful.
You weren't allowed to ever wear it that way, though. Ever. Not ever.
No, never. Don't ever let a sergeant catch you doing that. But they were there, and you could dream and imagine it. But it also did kind of bottle in, the heat on your head a little bit too. And you had the black boots that you could shine up and look real good, look like a real fucking soldier. But yeah, those things, they were like made out of a really nice, like thick, heavy canvas that was impossible to destroy. Like you could take it out in the field and you could fuck it up. Like I had a friend who she likes to make costumes, and I was like, ooh, you should make me a zombie costume with one of my old BDUs. And so I gave her a set of my BDUs and I said, yeah, make, zombie soldier costume. And she comes back and she did a good job on it, but she was like, this thing was like impossible to fucking destroy. Like I had to take like heavy duty scissors to it. It doesn't burn. Like she has like a little acetylene blowtorch to do work with. She's like, I couldn't do shit with this thing. Like these uniforms were really made to last. I'm like, yeah, I wish they still fucking had them instead of this garbage that we have now, which was the Army combat uniform, which ripped in the crotch constantly. They felt like people were like, oh, these are great. They feel like pajamas. It's nice. And then, a year later, your shit would be falling apart. It had Velcro all over it. They had plastic zippers instead of buttons, which guess what? I can fix a button that falls off. That's not hard. I cannot fix a zipper. Like that fucks the entire thing. And they were cheap zippers. So you would have, even if your uniform, like I had uniforms that somehow managed to last through an entire deployment, but then became completely useless because the Velcro was all blown out. So like the Velcro no longer sticks. It's like, all right, go ahead, fucking get rid of it, because they said like these are meant to be disposable. It's like, but why? Why not just make something that's good that I can take home after I do my deployment and continue to wear, rather than it look all fucked up and disgusting? I don't know. Did you get the fire retardant ones too?
Yeah, the fire retardant ones in Afghanistan was kind of weird because it seemed to me like they turned a weird kind of orange color very quickly.
Yes, they had a weird color. They had a weird sheen to them. And as soon as you got home, you got back to your units back in the States, they're like, no, don't wear that garbage. It looks like shit.
Get that shit the fuck off. Yeah, it's weird too because so I was going to make that point that in Afghanistan, we were constantly having blowouts on patrols or like on air assault missions because you're constantly taking a knee, pulling security, getting, down behind some rocks, getting behind fucking building corners, pulling security, like getting a low profile, taking a knee to cock on the radio. And it's like, even if you keep your belt cinched the way it needs to be so your pants are held up, like it doesn't fucking matter. Like take a knee in those uniforms, eventually you're going to blow the crotch out. And so imagine like a whole platoon of American soldiers looking just like disgusting, fucked up after being on a patrol for 48 hours, trying to go do a meet and greet and do a shura with some elders in an Afghan village, and basically everyone who's freeballing has their dicks just hanging out. Like it's insane. And that's 100% what happened because those uniforms are gross. And I'll tell you, like in Ranger School, that happened to a lot of people, and that was why I was like, I'm holding my BDUs. I mean, granted, at one point, my BDUs, Ranger School, you do some, you get some rough and tumble shit when you're up and down mountains. I did manage to blow out the crotch on and the pant leg of one of my pairs of ACUs, correction BDUs, but I just took a needle and thread and some dental floss and sewed them back together, when I wasn't pulling security one time in the patrol base, and they lasted. Like
you could fix
pretty
BDUs.
Incredible.
Yeah, they were incredible. I will always say I still have sets of BDUs. I sent one of my tops to somebody that's in our Discord, and she was really into the idea of having some BDUs. But like I had some old the BDU pants that somebody else gave me. And they were a really tall person, so they were pant legs that I couldn't wear them basically, otherwise I'd be flopping around in them. So what I did is I bought some old like little chairs little wooden chairs that had the seats pulled out of them. Cut the seats out. And I'm weaved in BDU pants onto the and they're great. I sit on those. They're like chairs for a kid. But like when my daughter is like, hey, come sit. She always takes the good chair, the rainbow chair that's like, really nice and sturdy. And then I got to sit on this fucked up little wooden one. But it holds me up every time. It holds my 200-pound fucking ass because that's how great and wonderful and strong the BDUs were. So what happened? Why did we move away from this? Well, they decided, I think what happened is the Marines got fancy digital uniforms and the Army was jealous. But the Army didn't want to do, so the Marines did the fancy digitals and they got green ones and they got desert ones, which is what you should fucking do. Like if I want, if
I'm not going to manage to do both,
right. If I went to Alaska or if I went into the Arctic, I would hope that you would give me camouflage that would be white. If I'm going to be, in a desert, I want desert colored. If I'm going to be in the woods, I want woodland color. I don't want something that's going to be like all because it's going to be nothing. So the Army decided like, well, we're gonna do that, but we're gonna do something that's universal. And I really this is one of those things where like I often wonder about the progression of how you get from I have an idea for uniform to it is being mass produced now, and nobody in that period saying this is fucking stupid. What are you doing? I feel like that's kind of like George Lucas and the prequel Star Wars, where everybody's just like, are we doing this? We're doing this? The virgin birth Jedi thing? That's what we're going to do? That's what the UCP is. So it, like we said, it doesn't blend into anything. The material was god-awful, fell apart all the time. It went through multiple different, I know I got uniforms from different manufacturers. They all sucked. They were all absolute shit. There was no universal fit to them. Sometimes the pants would fit me. Sometimes they'd be really loose. Sometimes they'd be really tight. When I just wear, there's like only 3 Army sizes and I wear medium regular. And that's, so you would think like that we have medium regular, it's this size and that's what we make. No, absolutely not, apparently. So
for the longest time, I was medium regular bottom, medium regular top for BDUs. And then for ACUs, the fit was so strange that I actually found myself either wearing small long or medium long, depending on the manufacturer for the top, which is weird because I mean, like when I was in the Army, when I was a cadet, I was like 175 pounds. When I was on active duty, I gained some weight. I was about 195 pounds. So the idea of a 6 foot tall, 195 pound guy wearing a small long is kind of weird, but that was the uniform that fit me. And then eventually I switched to medium long, and it's weird because like I'd come back from a training exercise after like, no drinking and doing fucking ruck marches and just like for a couple of, like a month or 6 weeks, and I'd be swimming in a medium long. It was crazy. Like I wasn't an anorexic. I wasn't that skinny, but for some reason that uniform fit wound up making me just like this baggy kind of like gunny sack just hanging off me. It was the weirdest thing.
So this cost the government $5 billion. To make this, to mass produce it, to send it out to all of us troops who all opened up our boxes of brand new uniforms and said, what the fuck is this shit? Of course, it only comes
There's a funny story behind that, too. I don't know if you know this, and I'm going to summarize, but the decision was unilaterally made by a one-star general who was in charge with the Division of Program Executive Soldier for coming up with a new camouflage print for the Army. And he unilaterally chose this. Basically, there was zero input from his staff in terms of like the decision made, and he chose it. They went into production. He then retired and took a job with the company that made the ACUs. I'm not kidding.
Oh no, that's 100% absolutely. They say it's a boondoggle. It's corruption. It's always corruption. It's always a general being corrupt somewhere. Ban generals. Like if you're a general and you retire, you shouldn't be able to get another job outside of like working as a Costco greeter for 5 years. Fuck this shit. I think isn't that how we got it's always some general too. It's always one asshole that's just like, I'm going to put my mark on this. And then they're like, our motto is now Army Strong or Army of One or something like that. Like one of those stupid things came from a general having a shower thought and being like, we should change the entire branding of the army. It's like, would you just like jerk off in the shower like a normal person and fuck off? Like, what now we're an army of one. You remember that army of one shit where it was like a guy running, it's like army of one because we're one team, but also the commercial is just one guy. And that's going to be our weird, like, that's going to be the weird, like, the messaging was really fucking off with that. And then they just went with Army Strong, which is where I get my name
I was
from.
thinking about the other day about being subjected to, like, the promo, like, the initial release of the Army Strong video with, like, the Army Strong music and everything. And it all seems so grim in retrospect. But I'm just going to say, too, just as a note, so one of the weird things with Pentagon corruption and Pentagon acquisitions that a lot of people may not know is that the summarized version is that in some meetings for acquisitions and for appropriations, there's not contractors and the corporations and such that are going to be the end providers of services, the bidders on a certain service aren't allowed to be in these meetings where, the military and such are like the senior leaders are deciding. However, they always have input from what they call graybeards, who are retired generals, who are like former leaders from previous eras, who basically get brought in and paid to consult for the military as retired generals. The thing about it is, though, is that those generals are also brought in and serve on the boards or as advisors to these companies. So even though they're technically there only in the capacity of retired, 3- and 4-star generals with great military experience, they're also there underhandedly as the representatives of companies who are bidders. And so this kind of shit happens, and it's an open secret in DC. I mean, there was a big expose in 2007 that Boston Globe did, and it landed with basically zero impact because everyone in DC already knew it. It sounds so cartoonishly corrupt to everyone outside of DC, but this absolutely is the case. It's just become normalized.
I mean, there's an entire movie called The Pentagon Wars that's about stupid corruption on these levels. So you have the army doing its own corruption, and then it's just the irony, the beautiful, rich irony of when the army is doing a corruption, and then Congress steps in and is just like, hey, you guys are doing something weird here, and we don't like it. So some of the ideas that Congress had after this massive boondoggle were that we should re-dye some of our uniforms, which I don't know if that's even fucking possible. To take all these things and dye them a different color and make them a different camouflage pattern. But also, again, like we said, the uniforms themselves just fucking suck. They were made out of garbage material that was terrible and should not have been put into a war zone whatsoever. And I think it was about 2010 when the new what we use now has come out. Now, they're still trying to do a universal pattern, and at least this is kind of closer to it. It's more of a woodland pattern. Now, the current Army combat uniform, the uniforms are a little bit better. They still don't have that good, like, thick canvas feel of the BDUs. You still can't iron them, which, like, I love but also hate. Like, I guess I remember back when I was a private, back in my day, where our drill sergeants in AIT would make Sunday nights were for ironing the shit out of your BDUs and polishing the shit out of your boots. And the damn kids today don't have to do this. They just play their video games.
That is very true. My God, you can just put them in the dryer and then just wash and wear. That I mean, I understand the argument where folks are like, oh, well, you take away the ability for people to show pride in their uniform, but it's like
discipline of ironing the shit out of you. And that's the thing,
it's
too.
Constantly fucking ironing. God, yes, I know. I remember.
And then you open, if you look at the instructions, the care instructions, it's like, don't put starch on this. And the drill sergeant would be like, fucking fuck that, put some starch on that. And what it would do is fuck up the uniform completely. But hey, it looked fucking crisp for whatever reason.
As hell, yeah.
So
the one thing I was going to say about the multicam, there was a commercial print basically by a camouflage provider. The reason why multicam, is now the OCP camouflage for the Army, basically. Special operations people were allowed to choose their own uniforms because, and obviously the ACU was such garbage that they weren't going to wear it. It was both poorly made and also it just didn't provide any camouflage assistance. You stood out like a sore thumb. I mean, you had been better off just wearing World War II khaki uniforms because, like, sure, ACUs became, or the UCP print became camouflage-ish after getting rolled around in the dust on a long enough timeline in, say, Afghanistan or Iraq. But I mean, by that point, you might as well have just worn a khaki uniform and done the exact same fucking thing. So basically, there became this debate within the military and within combat arms of like, well, if the Green Berets and the SEALs and the Rangers are getting to wear it, then why can't we? And I mean, Rangers even got to set their own uniform. That I remember a friend of mine was in the Veterans Day parade in Savannah, Georgia, in 1st Ranger Battalion, and so their dress uniform, the uniform they made them wear, was just the shiny pin-on badges that would be used on. I want to say they were like a version of the pin-on badges that you could get for your dress uniform, and they wore those on multicam with their berets, and the Army was like, fine, yeah, that's fine. So basically, there was already this need for a uniform that was actually going to be camouflaged, and on a long enough timeline, it finally got to the regular Army. It's just that they had to live out the life cycle of the UCP because General Fucknuts said this is what you're going to wear. And so my 7 years on active duty plus 3 of the 4 years I was a cadet beforehand were nothing but wearing the gray uniform with zippers and Velcro, which sucked. And such is life, you know? Who knows how many people silhouetted themselves and got blasted by snipers because they were wearing a stupid broken TV uniform. I don't know. But all I can say is good riddance to that piece of shit. I actually still have the uniform I was wearing basically the day I had to sign out and get I got my DD-214 and I signed out on leave, and then I took it off and I got in my civilian clothes and got on a bus to the airport in Seoul and then went home. I still have that uniform. It's still ACU, and I'll hold on to that, I think, barring disaster, just because it's my last uniform. But it's a stupid uniform and it sucks. It always sucked. We always knew that.
I have one of all of my uniforms. I have a couple sets of BDUs. I have one set of DCUs. Because it was when we turned everything in after Afghanistan, it was like, no, you have to wear it. You take one home because you got to be in uniform to take it home. And then I've got one set of ACUs put aside, and then I've got the OCPs. I'm going to lay that out. I think I still have my original dress uniform too, the green one. And then I've got the one that we have now, and then I'm sure that I'm not going to get pinks and greens before I get out, and I'm fine with that. I don't have any of the PT sweatpants, and I think I got rid of all the old gray PTs, but I still do use the PT shorts because they're shorts or it's whatever. But eventually I'm just going to do a layout of just like, here's my Army career and just like put little dollar amounts of like how much it costs for each one of these things, how much it costs you, the taxpayer, to fucking constantly change my camouflage. And then in wars that also are ridiculously expensive and fucking everything up. So
yeah, so I was going to say that about our recent bonus episode with Hassan Piker. I laid out the arithmetic of how much money it would cost to send a person to basically how much the Army would have paid, or the Department of Defense / the Department of Veterans Affairs would have paid for me if I had gone through with getting a PhD at CUNY. And it would have been a little shy of $300,000 for my entire, post-secondary education and then graduate education and living stipends in New York City, the most expensive place to get a living stipend in America. And yet that would be less. All of that together would be less than the cost of one Humvee, never mind the cost of the missile we have to use to blow up the Humvee once ISIS steals it. And so when you start to look at the math behind these things, it's just so absurd. And we joke, but it just represents this failure to come to terms with the scale of waste, both the waste in lives, the waste in energy, the waste in priorities, and the absolute waste in money that this all represents. And I'm glad the uniform is gone because it was a shitty uniform that sucked, but I feel that there's a certain symbolism behind a useless camouflage uniform forced upon the military by a corrupt general who wanted to get a sweet job with a contractor afterwards, that then led to, a decade plus worth of absolute just inability to do the most basic sort of like military fieldcraft because you stood out like a sore thumb everywhere besides a gravel pit with a little dusting of snow. Now, if we could just train in gravel pits and we were only going to fight in gravel pits, cool, but we're not.
Now, and to point out also, the OCP pattern is our uniform, but all of my other shit is still the old universal. Like, so my rain gear, my cold weather gear, my rucksack, my ranger pack, my butt pack, all that shit is still the old style. And the Army wants all of that back. Like, they're just like, no, you have to, like, when you get out of the Army, they're just like, no, we want all that shit back. I'm like, what are you going to do with it? Like, just let me throw it in a dumpster for you. I'll fucking, or give it, I'll put it out and leave it out for anybody who wants to steal some valor.
Yeah, I donated all of mine.
Yeah.
I had all my frac U's and all my fire retardant ACUs and my regular dress uniforms. I saved my dress blues, and I saved my one pair of ACUs that I was wearing when I signed out with my 2nd Battalion 9th Infantry Manchu belt buckle, because I did the damn Manchu mile. But I donated the rest of them. There was a donation bin in Brooklyn when I was living there, and so I sold whatever, like, what's the acronym we use for the, like, your, not basic issue items, but you know what I mean, like your the like field stuff, like duffel bags, like CIF issue stuff.
Your TA-50.
Yeah, I sold any leftover TA-50 that I didn't need. Like, I sold, like, my extra compasses and my extra duffel bags, and like I had a tactical tailor, what's it called, harness, like the equipment harness, instead of, or not, that's probably the wrong word, but like instead of a front a flick carrier for like canteens and ammo packs and stuff, I had one from Tactical Tailor that I wore in Afghanistan. I sold that online, like that kind of stuff. But like the uniforms I donated, because I mean, folks working construction and homeless people like can get that shit from Goodwill, and it'll help them, you know.
Yeah,
if anything, the frac U's were a little bit more durable, and those, like, if you're gonna like be painting houses, that shit'll work fine.
Yeah, I'm going to put most of mine out. Like, what I do is we have a lot of people that move through our alleys. So a lot of times I'm like, I want to get rid of this coat, but it's like, I don't want to take, I just put it out, like lay it nicely on the top of the of like the fence or something, and just make this disappear for me. And I'm going to do that with most of my uniforms. And I will say, if I wanted to say this when you were talking about how much it would cost for you to do your CUNY education, your PhD, go out and watch that video of the troops that are doing the Humvee drop out of the C-130s, and where and it slides off and it smashes into the ground. Imagine that is your education. Like, that's the money that would go for somebody, for you getting a PhD at a good New York school, and then watch that just smash into the ground while soldiers laugh at it. That is probably the best way.
Don't even consider that how much the budget is. I think it was a C-17 actually. Yeah. How much the budget for flight hours per year and fuel and rigging and the man hours required for them to rig that thing badly so it explodes, and the parachute. Think about the man hours required for the cleanup crew, the investigation after the fact. All of the CID people have to come out and to take a look, do their jobs there. I'm sure there were civilian contractors for like hazmat removal, because you just blown up a fucking Humvee in the middle of a field in Germany.
Oh, it's gonna be lots of fluids all over the place that you get. Cleaned up.
Imagine that. That's all that money. I'm gonna guess that's easily over $1 million. And that's just once. That's just one time. We don't burn in Humvees very often, but we do airdrop Humvees a lot. And it's like, that's how many tenure track positions, how many funded tenure track positions at universities could we have, or at trade schools? How many free services could we provide to people? I'm not saying you can't have like a fucking Coast Guard and like, a National Guard style militia, or even a small standing army as needed, but nothing like all that shit. And this is just in the lifetime experiences of one dumbass on the internet, aka me, and another dumbass on the internet, aka Francis, and some people who filmed a video and put it on US Army WTF moments. Like, that's just one thing, and we've already identified so much shit that could have helped people that instead has been burned to a fucking crisp. Imagine how that, on the scale of, there's 1 million global war on terror veterans. Like 1 million of us that have deployed to fucking combat. Imagine that scale of the wastage. And then you think, damn, if only my roads didn't have potholes, if only we had public transit, if only we had public schools that didn't suck, if only X, Y, and Z, all these things. And that's where $770 billion a year fucking Pentagon budget is going. To blowing up Humvees, either because ISIS stole them or because someone fucked up the rigging on a heavy drop and kaboom.
Yep. And I would be remiss to also not eulogize for our Navy listeners. The blueberries are now gone as well.
Oh really?
Yeah, those are I think that just hit its wear out date too. So those I don't know if it's gone or if it's like where ours was like for the last year, it was like, okay, everybody's getting the new uniform. You can still wear the old uniform, and then now the drop dead date is so for the Army, no more of the UCP. I think for the Navy, it's also no more blueberries.
Which sucks because I'm going to be honest with you, like the Navy uniform was really dumb, but I also thought it looked kind of cool. It had zero utility, although I had heard Navy people say to me that one of the reasons behind it was because they had previously worn a solid like navy blue uniform, but it was constantly getting smeared with grease doing like Navy sailor shit. And so as a result, like having the like pattern, the camo pattern one, made it less likely that a grease stain would ruin your uniform. But as far as camo goes, it was dumb. I still thought it looked kind of cool. I'm not gonna lie. Like, maybe I'm a huge dork. Maybe I'm a weeb. I don't know. I thought it looked like Future Wars uniform, and it just I liked it. I thought it looked cool. It would have been cool to wear one once. And who knows? Maybe if I get press ganged into service in the U.S. Navy when they fucking become the border force patrolling the waters on the English Channel, I'll have to wear one. Although you just said it's got its wear out date, so damn, maybe not. My dream of cosplaying is getting shattered this very moment.
Yeah, so just from military.com, it is gone, the wear out date. And I'm looking at the picture and it's just like, it does, see, if you lightened this up a little bit, this would be a good urban combat kind of uniform. But yeah, like
what are they replacing it with for the Navy?
Are they? I mean, doesn't
like,
the
what
Navy...
does the Navy wear now?
The Navy has like 1 million uniforms. Maybe they're going back to the fucking dungarees or something. Let's see.
Yes, everyone wears blue dungarees and beats off to anime when they're not turning a huge pipe wrench in a ship somewhere.
The blue hued uniform, quote, served its purpose for its era. Did it, though? Okay, so now the Navy...
Also, isn't it kind of new? Like, it can't be more than 10 years old.
Yeah, 2008 is when it came in. It's like, what era? Who did you... Like...
The era of crashing ships into each other in the fucking Sea of Japan, which has still not ended.
Yeah, this is what the military has decided, that the reason why we keep losing wars and fucking things up is we just don't have nice enough uniforms, which is why the Army's going back to pinks and greens to be like, remember when we won wars? Let's wear uniforms from then. We didn't win that war, the Soviets did. And anyway, so now the Navy, so it says, now the Navy is transitioning forward to a green and black digital camouflage design called Type 3, which was popular among soldiers and previously used by expeditionary forces. I think it's kind of like ours.
The Canadian one, because the Canadians have like a darker woodland green uniform that has some black in it, I think, which is not bad. It's a pretty good camo print.
It's the Marine. It's that like
it's the Marine one. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's that mix of woodland where it's not fully woodland, but it's also not fully. It's a Marine Navy.
Yeah, so like the Marpat green one. Yeah, that makes sense.
The Marines are just basically wet soldiers anyway, so it's kind of the same thing. Now the Air Force is taking the Army uniform. They're taking that on because the Air Force had that goofy tiger stripe.
They had their own gray that was even dumber than the ACU.
Yeah.
Yes.
Imagine taking the color scheme of the ACU, and instead of making digital, make it look like you're a tiger for some fucking reason. That's an Air Force uniform.
God, I'd forgotten how much the Air Force uniform sucked too. Yeah, how do you? I will say this much, because I was stationed in Alaska. The Air Force cold weather parka is like a fly ass wrapper coat. Holy shit! They have like a fur-lined parka, and there's like you'd see soldier or airmen wearing that as their dress uniform. The Army never had anywhere near as cool of a parka. I mean, I can't remember. We might have gotten something in our Arctic issue that we were never allowed to wear that had like a fur-lined collar. We did have our weird fur-lined mittens, but the Air Force had a fur-lined parka that literally was cool as shit. If it wasn't covered in dumb U.S. Air Force shit, if it was just like the grayish parka on its own with no labels and such, I might consider wearing a variant of it because it was literally that cool. But basically no one in the Air Force who wasn't stationed in like Eielson Air Force Base or Elmendorf Air Force Base in Alaska got to wear it. I don't know, maybe like Korea gets really cold, so maybe people, or like Manas, Kyrgyzstan, maybe they got to wear it. I don't know.
Well,
but every now and then the Air Force comes through.
And to be fair, the Navy I think the Navy still uses the pea coat, which like I have a pea coat. I don't have a Navy one, but I do have a pea coat, and those things are great. They're like, they look good, they're warm. It fucking bottles in your heat and everything. So there's some good. There's some
wear
good
a fedora. It goes great with it. You know, you can when you're at the bar negging women to pick them up. I mean, it's amazing.
There are some very good uniforms out there. Well, I'm sorry, very good uniform pieces. And then there's the rest of the bullshit. And that's the thing. All these nice things, you never really get to fucking wear them. Like, how often do you think a Navy person wears a pea coat other than like when you're in a specific uniform and it's a specific temperature and command has said, yes, you can wear a pea coat? The rest of it is just like put this.
When did you ever get to wear your trench coat in the army? When you had the OD green, the what's it called? Your dress greens.
I think I still have that somewhere. That trench coat was garbage anyway. But yeah, we had.
Oh, it was a piece of shit too. But yeah, we absolutely had a service issue trench coat for our I can't remember the name of the uniform because it's failing me, but the old Army dress uniform, the Greens uniform that was replaced by the dress blues while I was in. Because I wore dress greens for my commissioning. I wore them, in my graduation ceremonies for infantry school. And then when I got to my unit, I had to buy a set of dress blues and wear those because all the officers wore blues. It was just sort of default. You had to wear them. And then I got out, obviously, before like the new ones coming out. So we had a trench coat. I was never allowed to wear the trench coat, but we did have it.
Yeah, there's a clothing sales like on every base, which is where you can buy military like pieces for your uniform that maybe you have worn out and you need to replace. And there's like always seems to be like a weird section of it. It's just like, what the fuck is this? Like, here's where you can buy an NCO sword. Like, fucking really? I can carry a sword? No, you can't. But as an NCO,
never carry it.
You're allowed to have a sword. It's like, and only the hugest dorks have the sword. I think really you only have the sword for change of responsibility, where you're doing a new first sergeant comes in and you're handing the sword
I'm
back
just gonna
and
say
forth.
This. I gotta say this. Oh my god, I gotta say this. For one, hilarious. Everyone who's a goth in high school whose dad was in the army because they wore their dad's trench coat.
Oh god, yeah.
Secondly, when I was in airborne school, I just forgot about this. As a cadet in 2005, I saw a dude walking around near the airborne barracks, literally wearing his army trench coat, with like jeans and combat boots, like black boots, and like like some rock band T-shirt or some goth band T-shirt. And he had made bracelets, but they were like wrapped in not like your normal 550 cord bracelets, but like wrapped in spirals, like some kind of like actual like hoop bracelets. And I was just like, on one hand, wow, pulling off the look decently well, but on the other hand, like, my god, what a fucking nerd. So let's just say best wishes, good riddance, rest in peace to these uniforms. Hopefully in the future less embarrassing stuff will come along, or we won't need military uniforms, inshallah. But regardless, it's been a bad era, and farewell to the uniform that I wore in combat, the only uniform I ever wore in combat, which is a huge piece of shit like the war I was fighting in. Francis, we want to talk about bonus, don't we?
This week for the bonus, I sat down with Cynthia. She gave me another movie to watch. Cynthia Bethay is Nate's wife. We discuss various movies that are generally starring and made by and centered around African Americans. So we watched the 1988 movie Coming to America with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall. Fantastic movie that I believe kind of holds up. It is a very good movie, and Cynthia and I discuss not only the movie itself, but where its place takes in Black America. Cynthia is slowly educating my dumb ass into ingesting and taking in all of these works so that I can understand a level of America that I don't have a whole lot of exposure to. So that's a lot of what we're doing here. And so please enjoy this little tidbit of it. This is available on our Patreon, patreon.com/hell of a way to die.
One of the things about this movie is, like I mentioned, it's a really important movie for Black people. Like, we all just kind of like, you all just watch this movie. It's one of the only movies to come out with like a positive view of Africa for like how many decades?
Yeah.
Like I there's a podcast I like. It's called The Nod, and they have an episode where they actually talk with a bunch of people. Two people who were born, one person born in Sierra Leone, one person born in Nigeria, and they just talk about what they thought about this movie. And I mean, here's the thing about Coming to America. It's, like Zamunda is a fake place. And like when we see it, we get some of the imagery you expect. In the beginning, you see elephants. We also see like a mishmash of like what are pieces of different cultures in Africa. There are elements of the imagery that look Egyptian. There are elements that look South African. Like, we in American film tend to represent Africa like it's a country. And it's like, West Africa is different than East Africa, is different than North Africa, is different than South Africa. And so Zamunda is sort of trying to represent all of that. And like, I get why, but also like we should be able to do better. But also it's one of the only movies to come out about Africa that isn't just like, look at these African savages.
Yeah, look at these people in their mud huts. Like Nate and I talked about that in the Independence Day movie. Like the one time you see like, oh, and here's the one that crashed in Africa, and it's like little kids in loincloths coming out of mud huts. I'm like, this is 1996. They have cities, guys. Like we don't, but it's like, how else are we going to know they're in Africa if they're not like little kids with spears and loincloths?
And this one instead does like giraffes and elephants and like, we get African robes, but everyone is dressed. They're well taken care of. Those stuff. We're seeing a different sort of side. But also, like the next movie we see that really presents a different representation of Africa is Black Panther. So like that's a long sort of time in between. So like if this movie had come out and then 2 years later we saw another movie set in a different, a different part of Africa that was a little bit better about saying, we're not just going to do the mishmash Africa. We're going to set this in a real region of Africa and like represent the stuff in that region. But that's not what happened. It's like, this was it. Like if you, if you don't know anything about Africa, the only thing you might know is like watching this, and it's just like you're gonna make like Zamunda jokes or something like that, and it's like
right. It's like they have to, like you said, Africa is gigantic. It has cities, it has places that are rich, and it's like, well, if we want to make a place that is either one, rich, or two, technologically advanced, we have to make something up. And it's like, no, there's real cities there. There's people that do all of these things, and I mean, there are slums in Africa just like there's slums in America, guys. And also, country to country, it's different.
Right. And there are lots of rich people from various countries in Africa who go to places. When you go to American cities, you see rich people from various parts of the world, and you will see rich people from various countries in Africa. And you can tell they're rich if you know anything about Black people. Look at them and going, yeah, we know. But I do think, like I said, there's the positive imagery of like, representing not just like Black wealth, because we see Black wealth in America and also Black wealth in Africa, but also, and then the African side is just like, Africa. It's like, but I do like that they gave Zamunda a name and like, they try to sort of represent it as a place, but it's like, when I mentioned the monetary amounts, like the film very heavily is just trying to say like, this is a country with real money. It gives, the amounts it gives are really meant to show that like Zamunda is not a place that like, be easily dismissed and that sort of stuff. So like on the one sense, there's a a positive and a negative, but also like it's a romantic comedy made in 1988. Like my expectations of it are not that it's going to be perfect about this, but more that it would have been nice to have seen Hollywood look at this movie and the success of this movie and say, we could actually have more interesting and more in-depth films where we actually do consider the lives of Africans besides just being like, oh wow, Africa's one big country and it's got poor kids and mud huts, and like the only other thing you see is like African bad men with guns like coming to kidnap you or shoot you or attack like poor defenseless white women, like seeing other stuff like that. So in that sense, for me growing up, this is probably one of the first movies I saw with any sort of representation of any place in Africa, and so to me it was like, ooh, like this is this like amazing place. So like that has a positive effect, I think, on certain things. And so like having that is important, but like we literally didn't have that again until Wakanda. So yeah, something to be said for that.
Maybe if Eddie Murphy, maybe Hollywood would have been okay with it if Eddie Murphy had said that he wanted to make more, but if he had to go on and he had to go on and do Vampire in Brooklyn. So look,
we need to watch. Look, you still got to watch Harlem Nights. Like this movie.
Well, Halloween's coming up, so Vampire in Brooklyn would be a good.
Yeah, and I do enjoy Vampire in Brooklyn. I'm just saying, look, there's some fuck shit with Eddie Murphy. We can talk about his personal life, and Eddie Murphy is definitely not Hakeem in his real life. But I don't know if I'm going to tolerate the Eddie Murphy movie slander because the man's got a lot of quality.
Hey, Bowfinger. He was Mushu in Mulan. I was a big fan of his Nutty Professor.
Yeah, and I'm just saying we do at some point. I got to get you to watch Harlem Nights because it does have possibly the greatest scene I have. It might be my favorite scene in a movie ever. Which I will not spoil anything about it, but when you see it, I feel like you will know. But anyway, so there's that aspect of it. Another negative thing about this movie, and I feel like again, I wouldn't expect you to notice this, but and again, I actually suggest people seek out the Not episode about this movie if they're interested in it. Is whenever we see Black women in movies, by and large, Black women who are seen as beautiful and desirable are always light skinned. So Lisa has a sister whose name Patrice. And Patrice is dark skinned. And in this movie, Patrice is definitely portrayed as like the more like partier, there's almost an implication that she's a little bit like looser and like, she's not as serious. Lisa's the pretty intelligent one. And that juxtaposition of having like the light-skinned black woman as being like the desirable one that everybody wants and the dark-skinned one being not is just a thing in Hollywood. And it's just, it's a problem. It's a consistent problem that you continue to see. In fact, last week there was a video on Twitter and it was, from a new movie or new TV series that's about the Wu-Tang. And it had a similar situation where you had like a light-skinned, black woman and a dark-skinned black woman arguing. And it's like this idea that's sort of presented over and over again shows up. And it's really not a good thing. And also, like, lots of times, and I say this as a light-skinned black woman, white men will come up to you and, like, they'll make comments about, like, black women they find attractive. And inevitably, that list is always full of very light-skinned women. It's generally full of black women who have very, like, European features. Like, white men will tell you things like, oh, I've never found, like, a black woman attractive, but I like Halle Berry. And it's like, do you want a cookie for finding Halle Berry attractive? She's literally one of the most attractive people on this planet. Like, you don't get a gold star. Or, like, a dude would tell, be like, I don't really find black women attractive, even Halle Berry. Again, do you want a gold star? Like, what do you want from me? And so
I don't understand why dudes are like telling anybody who they want to bang.
Oh,
it's weird. It's weird.
It's very weird.
And I feel like that's very much a thing that only women like have to endure. I mean, I guess guys do talk about that with other guys, but I don't know. Like whenever
in a different way, I'm just unsolicited advice. If you're a white dude out there and you're just gonna like try to hit on a black woman, just
don't be like, hey,
you're the first black woman I found attractive, or like but. That sort of stuff is bad. But I'm just saying, like, there is this thing in movies. If you watch a movie with, like, black women in it, it's usually a light-skinned black woman who's going to be the one who's going to be the love interest. She's going to be the one who's portrayed as smart. She's going to be the one who's portrayed as intelligent. She's going to be the one who's portrayed as desirable. And, like, this is a sort of consistent problem. And so, like, obviously I don't expect any different from a movie made in 1988. But, like, I did watch this movie now as an adult. And I'm just like, man, they really did Patrice dirty, Like... she's seen as not serious. She really only when they go on a double date and it's Lisa and Daryl and Akeem goes because he likes Lisa, but he's technically Patrice's date and he's just completely disinterested in her. And so, she's seen as someone who's just sort of like, a sort of Lisa's hanger on. When Lisa and Daryl don't work out, she's basically right there like, Daryl, I'll be your girlfriend. And, just all of this sort of, stuff. And it's just like, at one point in the movie, Patrice actually figures out that Akeem and Simi have money, because she goes over to the apartment. And so this is an interesting thing because, like, unlike her sister, she figures this out. And Simi lies to her and says that he's the prince. And now all of a sudden she wants to date Simi, and she was deeply disinterested in him before. So she's definitely portrayed as being more shallow and all this sort of stuff. And so, like, that to me is something that doesn't sit well with me as an adult. It doesn't mean I'm going to throw this whole movie out. It's just sort of me going back and retroactively thinking, wow, like these stereotypes and tropes that I see in film now, I realize how much they were in films that I watched as a kid and I didn't think about it then, if that makes sense. So that goes in the con category. I'm hoping in the sequel we don't have any of this fuck shit. Like give Patrice her due. I want to see Patrice in this sequel living happy.
Yeah, I was hoping that Patrice would be in the final like wedding scene. Like you'd see Simi and
like,
Patrice would be standing next to each other. Yeah, it's just like Patrice is just kind of like
she doesn't even get to come. Like she's not even like
she's not even in the crowd. Okay, so as always, thank you all. I should have mentioned this at the beginning because some of you have probably turned off by now. But we have a shop. We have a shop now where if you saw all the cool patches that everybody was getting in the zines and the care packages, you can buy those now. hellofawaytodie.com/shop, or you can just go to hellofawaytodie.com. There is a link on the side that says hell of a way to buy. And so you can get all of those patches. We're going to be adding things. I think that like what we're going to kind of do is just do patches out of our store. We'll still have the Teespring. We'll still do t-shirts from there. I still kind of want to move some things around. Maybe move over to Redbubble or something like that. I'm not sure yet. I'm still fucking around with it. But for right now, you can get those patches, the magnets, the rock or something magnets that we do. Now, for those of you who do get the zine, don't worry. You will have exclusive patches that will come to you before they go out onto the store. But I think I'm going to try to do some Velcro ones for the military people. I'm going to be getting a quote for the Motrin and Water Medic ones pretty soon. So those should be coming to the shop as soon as I get those sent off, paid for, and they come back. We'll get those up onto the thing. But yes, for you, those of you still doing the zine, you will be getting things that are exclusive to you. You'll get them first before anybody else can get them. I still want to do that because I like that idea of you guys getting some exclusivity. But other than that, thank you all so much. You can follow me at Army Strang. You can follow Nate at In These Deserts. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Hell of a Way to Die, or excuse me, on Twitter at Hell of a Way. We're on YouTube. We're on the internet at hellofawaytodie.com. We are fucking everywhere. We are trying to jam this content into your brain however the fuck we can. So, and if you think that what we do is worth a couple of bucks and you want some bonus content, patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. We have our various tiers there. You get varying amounts of bonus content depending on what you put in. But any dollar amount gets you into our Discord server that has us and people from Joe Kasabian's podcast, Lions Led by Donkeys. So, there's a lot. There's a lot out there, and we've been doing this for a long time, so there's a lot of bonus content. So, as always, however you support us, whether it's monetarily, whether it's giving us 5 stars on iTunes, hitting subscribe on YouTube, or just telling your friends and family about how great and wonderful we are, or how much you hate us, and maybe it makes them say, well, if this guy hates it, maybe it's good. However you are helping us, we appreciate it and we thank you. So Nate, thank you so much, and we will talk to you next week.